try to keep it as simple and as fast as possible, because I know no one is going to watch 20 minutes, 30 minutes video explaining. So what's going on, guys? So today we're going to be discussing what happens when RU58841 goes systemic, and what are the differences between the RU and the finasteride, and which one should you use on your research subject. So without further ado, let's not use any fancy words that go over your head. Let's keep it as simple as possible for the average human being to understand. I know you're here for your hair loss, not here for like chemical fucking being a chemist. So I'm trying to simplify it as much as I possibly can. Okay, so let's start with first, what is finasteride? If you don't know what finasteride is, it's what happens when you take finasteride is that there's a testosterone levels in your system, and that testosterone naturally converts into DHT via the enzyme 5-alpha reductase. So when you take finasteride, you are inhibiting the enzyme. Therefore, that testosterone is not converting into DHT. And that means less androgenic activities around your androgen receptors. But when you take the finasteride, you are freeing up more testosterone. So your testosterone goes up and your estrogen goes up. That's what happens when you just take finasteride. RU, on the other hand, deals with the entire androgens in your system that bind to the androgen receptor. So there's androgen receptors all around your body, and there is hormones in your system, mainly testosterone and DHT. So the androgen receptor is here, and again, it's all around your body, specifically in your scalp where you have hair loss. So because the androgen receptors in your scalp are either sensitive or so dense or whatever the reasons might be, those hormones that flow around your body come to the androgen receptor and bind to it, and that causes hair loss. They miniaturize your hair. So what RU does, it binds to the androgen receptor and it prevents the androgen flowing around from binding to the androgen receptor and miniaturizing your hair. So let's get to the part where RU goes systemic. When RU goes systemic, again, it binds to the androgen receptor. Since it's not steroidal, it does not affect the steroids, androgens in your system, like testosterone, DHT, estrogen, and it does not affect any of that. In fact, it just raises it, because on paper it raises it because it binds to the androgen receptor and there is more hormones flowing in your system. That if it severely goes systemic, that's what's going to happen. But in theory, what happens when you, in the scalp, when you use a minor dose, like a recommended dose, like let's say as low as 20 milligrams per milliliter RU, it goes to that, and it partially goes systemic because you're penetrating the skin, it goes through the hair follicle, and it should be staying there. That's a term, means systemic. So anything that you apply that get absorbed to the skin, beneath the skin, to the hair follicles, that in theory called systemic absorption. But let's say like if you have like a severe absorption, you're probably taking an extremely high dose, like 50 milligrams plus. In my opinion, no one should exceed 50 milligrams of RU unless they check many other factors that are involved. If you have like anti-androgenic side effects, and you go to the doctor and you do a blood test and you see your testosterone like fucking 800, and you'll be like, no, I must be fine. No, that doesn't mean anything, because it just raises androgens in your system. So that's one thing to keep in mind. So in summary, RU is not steroidal. It does not affect the serum production of androgens. If anything, it just raises it by binding to the androgen receptor and stopping the androgens from binding to the androgen receptor. And that's what happens. So let's get to which one should you use, either the finasteride or the RU. So for your research subject, for Jason, let's say, you've tested, and let's say you had above average DHT levels. Okay, let's say, for example, you had 100 or 102, 103 DHT levels. As we know, DHT has 5 times more binding affinity to the androgen receptor than testosterone does. So if you have extremely high DHT levels and you take RU and you apply RU, it will not bind to the androgen. It will bind to the androgen receptor, but not as much as DHT. It will only prevent testosterone from miniaturizing the hair, but not DHT, because RU is at least as potent, or almost as potent as testosterone only. It does not really compete with the DHT levels as much, because DHT is way stronger in binding to the attaching to the androgen receptor. It's like a freaking lollipop that sticks and never get anywhere, basically. So that's what happens. By using RU, you need to use like a massive doses in order to compete with that DHT that you are not inhibiting in the first place. When you use higher dosages, your chances of having side effects will actually like go up higher. So we don't want to do that. And what you best do for your research subject again is to inhibit DHT. How? By using finasteride. So finasteride lowers the DHT levels again, and in that case, if you inhibited the DHT and you still have a little bit of hair loss going on your research subject, that means that it's the free testosterone, or the testosterone that was supposed to convert into DHT, and that's when you start using the RU if you still have hair loss. Now, everybody's in a spectrum. Some people are not as sensitive to testosterone as they are to DHT, and they're lucky as hell, to be honest. So that's when RU comes to play for that free testosterone that is flowing around your system that was supposed to turn to DHT. So by binding to the androgen receptor, it stops the circulating testosterone that is left from turning into DHT from miniaturizing the androgen, and then you have like a complete protection from testosterone and DHT from binding to the androgen receptor. And let's say you're someone who is using anabolic steroids, okay? You can't get away with using steroids and saving your hair. It's just not going to happen. Let's say you're using 3 or 4 more compounds that are way more potent than the in binding affinity than the RU. So by using the RU, you're not going to save your hair if you're using a shit ton of gear. It happens, it helps, but it's not going to be like as efficient. So if you're trying to save your hair and you're using a shit ton of gear and thinking that the RU is like the God-given solution for your hair loss, then I'm afraid it's not going to happen. So I hope that helped. I tried to explain it as simple as possible, because honestly, all the anecdotal data that I see on the internet or on YouTube, they're all like it took me like years to kind of understand what they are saying. I had to get into studying this stuff too, and to kind of get an elaboration on what's going on. So I hope that helped. I tried to keep it as simple and as fast as possible, because I know no one is going to watch 20 minutes, 30 minutes video explaining. So I hope that helped. If anything, remember, just use this stuff on your research subject, on your JSON. And that's pretty much it. Check me out on Instagram, share, like, subscribe, and spread the message for everyone who wants to get to know this stuff simply. And that's pretty much it. And thank you guys for watching, and I will talk to you later.